Tales from the couch, Wednesday. We start in Phoenix. They beat Sacramento. So if you look at Phoenix, they're 11-4 in their last 15. Milwaukee has the best record in their last 15. We'll get to them and their win last night. Philadelphia's second best, 12-3. So Milwaukee 13-2, Philly 12-3, 11-4 for Phoenix, and that's despite having all these things kind of moving all over the place. Devin Booker was back for his third game, and boy, was he back. It doesn't even look like he missed any time if you watched just last night's game. He was incredible. 32 points in 29 minutes, 0 3-point attempts throughout. Chris Paul, season high, 19 assists. He can't shoot in February. Don't know what's going on there. 32%, 16% from three. But he had two really good shooting months from deep previous to this, which I thought was a good sign despite the kind of up and downness of the entire thing. Booker was great. Paul was great. I thought, movement's another thing I'm always kind of looking for. So I thought he was great on that part of it. Probably stop trying to use that word a ton. And then DeAndre Ayton, let's get a new adjective in here. Terrific. And also very decisive with the basketball last night. So if you look at Ayton's numbers, you can go, well, hey, look what he did in January. Look at that bump. I also think that's opportunity with other players being out at times. If I want to go totally rose-colored glasses here with the Suns, I could say during that time, he knew he needed to take on more. So that will make him even more impactful down the I don't know. I think with Ayton, as I've said probably too many times now, I like him. There was a chance I was going to love him. I don't think that chance still exists. I think there's just an approach thing with him that you'd like to see a little bit more consistently, but the numbers are always really, really good. So then that leads us to kind of the other rotational pieces here. Okogie last night was terrific. Its passing was really good. He shot it well the last 2 months. We know that he's a terrific defensive player. The closing minutes are probably not worth making a ton out of because if you look at this with the other moving pieces, you've got Torrey Craig, big minutes, Ish Wainwright out there. But they've added TJ Warren and then Terrence Ross in the buyout market. So the point of all of this is that when Durant comes back, this is going to be a huge fucking problem. It just is. We can play the health game. You got me. You can play the health game with a lot of teams. You want to say that because of Durant and the Chris Paul part, that their health game is a worse bet than others? I would agree with you. But if this group is healthy, I don't know what you're supposed to do with them. And here's why. One of my favorite things about Durant is that he is a star who can adapt, right? Playing basketball is about adapting to other people that are on your team and going, well, if this guy needs this, then maybe I need to do this a little bit more. And if this guy needs help, maybe I need to start thinking about this. Okay. That part is left out too much in the counting world. I'm not going to go on that rant again. I need to stop myself from going on that rant. Durant, like, what do you need? Need me to ISO bucket? No problem. Need me to help defend at the rim? No problem. Do you need me to space while you run something on the other side and then I'm your kick out option and not Josh Okogie in the corner? No problem. And the great thing is that Devin Booker's like that because he's had to play multiple roles for Phoenix. He was the 2 guard, then he was the point guard forever, and then Chris Paul gets there and he's like, I'll go right back to 2 guard. He and Chris Paul have worked together. Chris Paul would be happy not taking a shot for like 3 quarters, by the way. So you don't have to worry about that part of it. And then Ayton, now, nobody's going to run their offense to the rolling big all the time, but you still have to respect it because Ayton with momentum on the roll, which you even saw a few times last night, like that's something you still have to honor. He doesn't catch it every time. Looks like sometimes they don't, but it's not like it's some disastrous big. He's got great touch. And when he actually is like, I'm going, he's way better than when he just thinks about, should I go or not? So you're talking about 4 players there where their basketball DNA is I'll get you what you need if you need me to, but I will also work with you. And I don't know that we have enough of that at the highest level of basketball. I could run through a bunch of different teams, like even the Luka and Kyrie thing, which we'll get to Kyrie here in a second from 2 nights ago. He looked incredible. But you're like, is the overlap compatible? Or is the overlap your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn that we saw with Tatum and Brown for a while there in Boston? Then they kind of just figured it out. With this group in Phoenix, you have players that I believe already kind of get what they need to do and also what they need to sacrifice, which is one of the most challenging parts about building a basketball team. And for me to assume that it's all going to happen before they've even played, you can think it's dumb. I don't, because I've watched all of these players, right, for their entire careers. And that's the best part of this. So when you think about the closing group, it's Durant, Booker, Ayton, Paul. Do they want to put a shooter out there and Ross? Is Okogie keep the shooting up? So now you have a defensive 3-and-D hybrid guy. Do they want to put TJ Warren out there to get buckets? When TJ Warren, his last full 2 seasons, which again was a while ago, he shot over 40% from 3, and he could put it on the ground and go as well. So then when you think about what you're attacking defensively, you can sit there and say you're switching into Chris Paul. There's no team in the playoffs that's just going to run their offense where all they're doing is switching to Chris Paul the whole time. And to be a defensive liability, you have to be a liability on the ball, which is what we focus on too much. But you also, the worst liability is the off the ball liability, the guy who just doesn't fucking care. Like, oh, you're going to cut, I'm going to lose you, I'm not going to pay attention. Find a way. We're all taught this at a very early age. Find a way to pay attention to all 3 things at the same time, okay? And there's guys that don't have any interest. So even if Chris Paul physically isn't going to hold up in switches, which is going to happen to him at some point, it's been happening, I'd say the last couple of years, where people are looking to attack him, you're not going to get so far out of your own offense that you're going to then just to go ahead and attack this one thing. And Paul is still competitive enough. He's always going to be that competitive that he's going to care about all the off-ball stuff. And then if Okogie's in the closing group, then you could probably get away with putting Paul on somebody you're not even worried about on a perimeter offensively at all. So if this team is healthy, I'm telling you, good luck. All right. A couple other things here. Sacramento, I don't really have a ton on it. This is an offense that was number 1 in January. They've dipped now halfway through the month to 15th, kind of a small sample. The defense is still not great. And it's going to sound a little I don't know what anybody would have done. Like, this isn't even a knock on Sacramento's defense. Can they do a little bit too much of the dribble handoff with the Fox Sabonis thing? Keegan ended up getting benched last night a little bit. But I don't want to turn this into some negative thing about Sacramento because it isn't. It's just that I don't think too many teams were going to beat Phoenix last night with the way they had their 3 guys rolling with that. Also, looking at the standings real quick, Phoenix, 1 game behind number 3 Sacramento there, and 3.5 games behind a Memphis team that's 3-7 in their last 10. Memphis, by the way, real quick, last 15, 21st on offense, 7th on defense. So they're still playing some defense, not writing them off at all. And we'll go back to the East. Milwaukee beats Boston last night in overtime. Milwaukee is probably my biggest benefit of the doubt team after I just gave you all this praise for Phoenix. They've won 11 straight, longest win streak since 2019 when they won 18 straight. Giannis in February, just a casual 37, 13, and 7. 56 from the floor. He's actually averaging more assists per game than Drew Holiday right now. Milwaukee's still missing Portis, where that return from his injury seems delayed. And, of course, they're getting Jay Crowder back, who looks super happy just to be on the bench of Milwaukee. So, okay, I know what you're going to do here. You're like, dude, they beat Boston without Tatum, Brown, Smart, Horford. Yeah, they did. They did. Overtime at home. That's what it took. I don't know if it's a Doc Rivers rule. In effect, Doc Rivers rule, for those that are new here, that he would always say, I'd rather everybody play because when the main guys don't play, then my team's not going to try as hard. I don't think that was it. I thought Boston had a pretty good game plan for what they wanted to do for Giannis. He actually didn't shoot it all that well. He was missing all his free throws. And then at the end, guess what? He did everything he needed to do because he's fucking awesome. They would get him on kind of some deep catches against Brogdon. It looked like Brogdon was the primary defensive assignment there. I have to go back and look at it all, which I'm not going to. He got Hauser a couple times. And I would say you felt like Celtics were holding up enough despite, I don't think anybody really cares anymore about giving up deep catch position anymore. I mean, unless you're absolutely sealed at the rim, that even Giannis, who could just turn baseline, like he got Hauser on one of them. You're like, I actually felt bad for Hauser at that point. Eventually, they did put Grant on Giannis, which was late, but I'm assuming they kept Grant off of Giannis until they felt like they had to, because I think they were just trying to avoid whatever was going to happen on the Drew Giannis screen, which is a good chunk of what they were doing in the fourth quarter. But yeah, I just don't think teams defensively care about like, oh, or no, are we giving up a post position we don't like? Are we at a massive disadvantage post play? Because nobody fucking throws it down there consistently enough anymore. I just don't think coaches even care if they feel like, all right, cool. They've got a mismatch at a post. Cool. Sit there. We're going to double you as soon as you put it on the ground. You're not shooting a three. On the other side for Boston, Derek White, great again. Eastern Conference Player of the Week. He has been phenomenal for them and kind of, looks a lot more like the guy that they moved some assets for with San Antonio, because I think it was a little up and down last season. It looked like he was always looking to attack Ingles late when they could. They'd get the switch on to Ingles. That was what was happening multiple times. But there was a lesson okay, in last night's game. The lesson was the reason we freak out about all these great players, the guys that can get their own shot, get separation, get a look when everything shuts down. I call them my shot clock scores where, hey, here's the ball. The set's already been broken up. We're not running anything. You might not even get a screen. There's 6 seconds left. Can you get anything that resembles a good look? Those teams win in the playoffs for the most part. Those are the players that we all obsess over. And the reason why they all get away with everything, whether you like some of them or don't like others, that's why we care, because they're so important. And what you had with Boston last night was Sam Hauser on a dribble drive where he got angled off. It wasn't even close. He had to throw it back out. Derek White, who I really like, but then he tried to get Drew Holiday, and that wasn't happening. Drew Holiday, the way he stands up straight and defends and then reaches, gets the steal, gets the dunk, that was pretty much the game. And then they had a little Grant Williams hot sauce action off to the left side, which he went up against Giannis, and that didn't work either. So just a little bit of a reminder of why we care about the guys that can score and do it on their own. Because when you see a team trying to close against a really good team like Milwaukee, and here's Boston fighting the entire night. Like Hauser hits the 3 at the end of regulation. Shout out to Stan Van Gundy for pointing that out, knowing the scouting report on Coach Bud, going, he doesn't like to foul. He's one of the few teams that doesn't like to do anymore. They're probably not going to foul. Why you're not fouling anymore, I don't get. Now, sure, could you get unlucky and get called for the 3 free throws? If the offensive player is really good at anticipating your foul and flails, then you get the call. Yeah. But there was a moment there where Middleton could have gotten Hauser. It was a crazy shot that Hauser even hit. So, maybe I'm playing the results more, but I just thought we were at a point. But I thought, again, Van Gundy pointing that out was terrific. Terrific scouting. Good job on the broadcast there. So, yeah, Drew, just so good defensively. There you go. Toronto, they've won 5 of 6. The wins, though, Houston, Memphis, San Antonio, Detroit, Orlando. They beat Orlando last night. I keep wondering if they or Atlanta can make some kind of push. Atlanta's the 8 seed now at 29-29. Toronto's the 9 seed, a game and a half back behind them, 28-31. Let's talk Jakob Poeltl. 3 games with Toronto. The first 2, 6 points, 6 points. And then last night, he goes 39 with 6 blocks, 30 and 9 with 6 blocks. He was 15 of 17 in 37 minutes. I kept wondering when Nurse was going to take him out of the game, and Nurse was like, nope, I'm winning this, which speaks to some of the, as we had mentioned earlier on a podcast, where it was like, yeah, Nurse can push his guys a bit. I don't know if it's like prime Chicago Tibbs, where it felt like, hey, what are you, 38? Now I'm 26, but I've been playing for Coach Thibodeau. I'm like, oh, okay, good luck with that. So I just, like, I've always liked Poeltl. I always have. I was like, man, but again, none of us give a shit about centers anymore. But what I loved about him is that it wasn't just the 6 blocks. It was defensively where he was positionally. And that's why I think Nurse stayed with him, because you're expecting Franz Wagner to go off at some point in the fourth quarter. Franz had a bad game, not a big deal, but he had a tough fourth quarter because it was like, even if I get a screen and when you're sitting there watching, you can be like, okay, I get the screen and then I kind of decide what I want to do and observe everything. And then you could be like, all right, this sucks because if I wait, I don't have anywhere to go. So now I'm just going to go. And then it can look like it's completely out of control, but you can totally understand why the player's doing it, because he's like, well, the other stuff hasn't worked. So now I'm just getting the ball and now I'm going. And with the length of Toronto, when it's right, it's really tough to deal with. And you have Poeltl who's sliding over to help and shut off the driving lane. And then he's blocking everything. And then when they're sending out pressure, Orlando was, because Suggs is just a menace out there defensively. He had a really nice night last night. I guess I could do a minute or two with Suggs. Maybe not. I'm not sure. They were pressuring on the ball. So then Poeltl's coming up as that safety, that release valve catch, and then he's making passes. So Nurse was like, I'm just riding with this dude. And he was terrific. And I think gives Toronto, just straight up, gives them a different look. Makes it tough to rebound. The guys from Orlando after the game were even saying like, man, that dude's out there. Like, Suggs is a tough fucking dude. And he was like, Poeltl, you can't jump over him. You're not going to move him. So nice night for him and a nice acquisition for Toronto, which maybe, I'm not quite there yet, but it's make me think, okay, could they make some kind of push? Could they get up to like a 6 seed or something like that? I don't know. A lot of work to do. Still don't always love the half court offense. Suggs, I guess I'll do a little bit of her on this. I think defensively, it's already really special. We're all going to wonder about the shooting. He's a good athlete and he's tough and he's strong, but there's times where it looks like he's a little I don't know. It just looks sometimes like he's small around the rim. Like where Fultz will have moments. He had a dunk last night, man. Fultz had a dunk in traffic that was like all-timer stuff. But then Fultz can sometimes get caught at the rim a little bit too. So like there's not like this crazy springy bouts, but I would say Suggs isn't really that guy. He's not, he did so many awesome things at Gonzaga, and we knew that his background was a football player, quarterback, and all that kind of stuff. But I like his competitiveness. I like how he's in the closing group. They were missing Cole Anthony last night. But Orlando, whatever. They are now 1-10 on the second night of a back-to-back. And by the way, OG Anunoby, he's missed 9 straight, which is kind of why when I heard so many teams offering 2 firsts, not sure if I truly believe they were unprotected, but that Toronto was looking for a third. That's where I'm like, hey, I like him. I don't like him that much. And it could be why they thought they had a higher bid on it. I don't know. It also could mean some of the stuff that I got isn't true. So who knows? Okay, last game here, because I didn't really lock into Portland's loss at home against Wizards, but congrats to the Wiz. Real quick here, the Clippers pulled away from Golden State at the end of the third. That was kind of the game. The new guys, Bones, Plumlee, and Eric Gordon played 55 minutes. This is a lot of guys. I think that's kind of the concept of what the Clippers are going with here. They added a little bit of money, moving some people out. But when you look at the availability of everybody they have, you're like, I guess you're just going to throw a ton of dudes and a ton of dudes that can put the ball on the floor and score and spot up and shoot. I don't know what that'll mean for the rest of the rotation stuff. Batum was at 8 minutes last night. So need to double check on what that was or start tracking some of that stuff. It looks like in February is under 20 minutes per game anyway. But these were the top 2 3-point shooting teams in the league in the last 15. Golden State at 42%, Clippers at 40%. Clay played in his first back-to-back, I think, in close to 4 years last night, but they just don't defend anybody. I mean, Golden State's got the 3rd worst road record in the NBA. They've got the 3rd worst defense on the road in the NBA, and those other 2 teams are tanking, right? So I don't, I guess I'm just going to look at Golden State the entire time and go, let me know when they have Curry back. And if they have Curry back, we're going to give them a chance. We're going to give them a chance to do something. But they've just sucked on defense for such a weird stretch on the road. And again, that road record is vastly improved from where it was at the beginning of the season. One concerning thing here with the Clippers, 9-6 in their last 15. They're 4th in offense, but 22nd on defense in the last 15. But one thing that was always interesting about the Clippers is despite the in and out part of the Paul George Kawhi experience, which seems to be settled now, we're in a good stretch of it, their defensive numbers by month, this is again per 100, they were 5th, they were 9th in November, they were 7th in December, January they were 21st. So they're getting the guys back, but they're actually statistically becoming worse defensively, which could be, I don't know, just something that's happening, or it could be perhaps an alarming trend if you're thinking about, wait, don't we have the 2 wing guys back? And there could be more to this than I'm not even aware of. But, the Clippers are, actually last night's matchup of those 2 teams is a really good kind of like question of like, how much faith can I have? How much faith can I have in a Clippers team that on paper still looks really competitive? Looks like it's a concern, but it's been a bad bet in the past versus Golden State that seems to figure this stuff out, and yet we're in February and they're not figuring it out. But if Curry's not there, what do we make of any of it? There you go. Justin McCouch.